I faked losing my stake in the family empire to test my fiancée, then caught her scheming with my brother and exposed her gold digger mask. Hi Reddit. I never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but after everything that's gone down, I feel like this story needs to be shared. It's about realizing that not everyone you let into your life deserves to stay. I'll start by saying I've always been a guy who takes care of the people I care about. My dad taught me that. He built a real estate development company from the ground up, turning it into something massive, but he also made sure my brother Luke and I earned our way. Summers on job sites, late nights learning the business, it wasn't handed to us on a silver platter. So when I started making good money, I didn't mind spending it on the woman I loved. Enter Monica, my ex-fiancée now. From the moment I met her, she had this energy about her. Confident, stylish, the kind of woman who turns heads without even trying. We clicked right away, and I thought I'd found the one. I'm not going to lie, I liked spoiling her. If she mentioned wanting something, I'd make it happen. A designer bag? Done. Weekend getaways? Sure. Dinner at the nicest places in town? I didn't even blink. It wasn't about showing off or keeping her happy to keep her around, I just believed she deserved the best. At the time, I thought that's what love was. Giving. And to her credit, Monica played the part of the perfect fiancée. She'd light up whenever I surprised her with something, call me her provider, and tell her friends how lucky she was, and yeah, I ate it up. But everything changed when my dad passed away a few months ago. Losing him wasn't just a personal blow, it was like losing the foundation of everything I'd built my life on. He wasn't just my father, he was my mentor, the guy who showed me how to navigate the world. I was grieving, trying to figure out what life looked like without him, and at the same time, I had to step up in the business alongside Luke. It was a lot. Monica, though, she didn't seem to notice or care how much I was struggling. At first, I thought it was just her way of giving me space. She wasn't exactly the nurturing type, but I figured everyone processes loss differently. Except it wasn't just that she wasn't supportive, it was the shift in her focus. Barely 2 weeks after the funeral, she started asking questions about the company, not the casual how's work going kind of questions. No, these were pointed, detailed, business-focused questions. When do you officially take over? Who's on the board now? Do you have full control? Is Luke going to try to take a bigger piece of the company? At first I answered because I didn't think much of it, but the more she asked, the more it felt wrong. She didn't ask how I was holding up or if I needed anything. She didn't even mention my dad unless it was in the context of the business. All she seemed to care about was what came next, and not for us, but for her. The questions weren't just weird, they were relentless. I'd come home after a long day, exhausted from balancing work and grief, and she'd pounce. How much equity do you have now? Do you have final say on contracts, or does that go through Luke? What about expansion? Are you leading that now? It was like she'd been waiting for this moment, and now that it was here, she wasn't wasting any time. I started noticing other things too. The way she talked about the business like it was her golden ticket, the way she'd casually mention projects to our friends, dropping hints about how we were growing the empire. And don't even get me started on the way she started throwing Luke's name into conversations. Luke's so business savvy, she'd say. You two must make such a great team. At first, I chalked it up to pride, her wanting to show off my success. But the more I paid attention, the more it felt calculated. She started pushing to attend meetings she had no reason to be at, claiming she wanted to learn more about the business. She even suggested hosting a dinner for the board members, saying it would help her build relationships. It was also so transparent. The thing is, Monica had always loved the perks of my lifestyle, but this was different. It wasn't about enjoying the benefits of being with me, it was about positioning herself. She wasn't acting like a fiancée, she was acting like someone vying for a spot on the company's payroll. I didn't say anything at first because I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this was just her way of coping, maybe she thought she was helping by being involved, but deep down, I knew better. One night, as we sat on the couch, she casually dropped a line that stopped me cold. So, if something happened, and you weren't running the company, what would you do? The question hit me like a brick, not because it was offensive on the surface, it wasn't, but because it revealed how she saw me, not as Max, the man she supposedly loved, but as Max, the guy tied to a multi-million-dollar company. I couldn't let it go. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said it, like she was testing the waters. It stayed with me, gnawing at the back of my mind. Was I being paranoid, or was there something deeper going on? I started replaying every interaction we'd had since Dad passed. Things I'd brushed off before suddenly felt different. She wasn't acting like someone who loved me and wanted to help me through a tough time. Instead, it felt like she was sizing me up, like she was calculating her next move. It didn't help that she'd become almost obsessed with the company. She'd always known what I did for a living, but she'd never cared about the details before. Now, it was all she wanted to talk about. Whenever we were together, the conversation somehow ended up circling back to work. My role, Luke's role, the board, the projects. One night, we were sitting in the living room, and she was scrolling through her phone. Out of nowhere, she said, "You know, I was reading this article about succession planning. It said family businesses can get really messy if roles aren't clearly defined. Do you and Luke ever fight about who's in charge?" I glanced at her, trying to read her expression, but she didn't even look up from her phone. "Not really," I said, keeping my tone casual. "We both know our strengths, and we work together. It's not a competition." She nodded, like that answer satisfied her, but I could see the gears turning. It wasn't the first time she'd brought up Luke lately. It seemed like she was more interested in his role in the company than in anything I was doing. At first I thought she was just being polite. Luke and I had always been close, so it made sense that she'd want to get along with him. But now it felt like something else entirely. The turning point came a few days later. I was in my home office, trying to catch up on some paperwork, when Monica came in holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one with a smile and perched herself on the edge of the desk. "You've been working so hard lately," she said, her tone sweet but oddly deliberate. "Do you ever feel like you're carrying all the weight on your shoulders?" I shrugged. "It comes with the territory." She leaned in a little closer. "But doesn't it bother you that Luke gets to share the load without dealing with the same pressure? I mean, you're the face of the company now. He's just assisting, right?" That hit a nerve, not because she was right, Luke and I had always been equals in the business, but because it felt like she was trying to plant a seed of doubt. "Luke's not just assisting," I said, a little sharper than I intended. "We're a team. Always have been." She pulled back, looking surprised, but she didn't drop it. "I just think you deserve more credit, that's all. You're the one running the show now." I didn't respond, but the whole conversation left a bad taste in my mouth. It wasn't like Monica to talk about Luke that way. If anything, she'd always been polite and respectful toward him, but now it felt like she was trying to drive a wedge between us, or maybe she was testing how much control I really had. After that, I couldn't stop noticing the little things she did. When we went to events, she'd position herself near the power players, laughing at their jokes and slipping into their conversations like she belonged there. At home, she'd casually ask me about deals and contracts, and whenever Luke came up, she'd find a way to steer the conversation back to his role in the company. The worst part was, I couldn't talk to anyone about it. Luke would have called her out immediately, and I wasn't ready to go there yet. My friends didn't know her well enough to see the change, and I wasn't about to burden my mom while she was still grieving, so I kept it to myself, turning the pieces over in my head and trying to make sense of it all. Was I imagining things, or was Monica showing me who she really was? One night, I decided to test her. Nothing big, just a casual comment to see how she'd react. We were having dinner, and I mentioned that a new project was running over budget. "It's going to be a headache," I said, spearing a piece of steak with my fork. "The board's not happy, and Luke's been up to his ears in it." Her eyes lit up, and she leaned forward. "Oh? What's the project?" "It's just a residential development," I said, keeping my tone light, "but it's tied to a lot of other deals, so the pressure's on." She nodded, clearly trying to act nonchalant. "Sounds stressful. Are you the one who has to handle all that?" "Not really," I said. "Luke's taking the lead on this one. He's better at the big picture stuff." Her face didn't change, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She didn't press the issue, but the fact that she'd latched onto the project so quickly confirmed what I'd already suspected. She wasn't interested in me, she was interested in what I could give her. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out my next move. I didn't have concrete proof yet, but my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. The hardest part was reconciling the Monica I'd fallen for with the person she was becoming. When we first met, she'd been so warm, so genuine, or at least I'd thought she was. Now it felt like everything she did was calculated, like she was playing a game I didn't even know I'd entered. But I wasn't about to let her win. If Monica thought she could manipulate me into giving her what she wanted, she was in for a rude awakening. I'd spent my whole life watching my dad navigate tough situations, and if there was one thing he taught me, it was how to spot a snake in the grass. I decided then and there that I wasn't going to sit back and let her control the narrative. If she was playing a game, I was going to play it better. By the time I decided to test Monica, I wasn't questioning if her intentions were bad, I was questioning how far she'd go. Every little thing she did seemed like another piece of the puzzle falling into place, and I knew I needed to act before it was too late. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Monica wasn't in this relationship for me. She was here for the lifestyle, the money, the access. And now, with my dad gone, she saw an opportunity to cement her position in the family business, or, at least that's what it looked like. But I wasn't about to sit back and let her play me. If she was here for the wrong reasons, I needed to know for sure, and the best way to do that was to create a scenario where her true colors would shine through. I spent a few days planning how I'd do it. It had to be believable but also hit her where it mattered most, her vision of our future together. If she thought my role in the business wasn't as secure as she'd assumed, I wanted to see how she'd react. Would she stick around? Or would she start looking for the next opportunity? One evening after dinner, I decided to drop the first hint. We were sitting on the couch and I casually said, "I've been thinking a lot about how things are going to change now that Dad's gone. There's been a lot of talk about restructuring." Monica looked up from her phone, her interest clearly piqued. "Restructuring? What kind of restructuring?" I shrugged, keeping my tone nonchalant. "Oh, just a few shifts here and there. Nothing major. It's mostly about making sure everything's running smoothly." She nodded, but I could tell she was waiting for me to say more. Over the next few days I started dropping more breadcrumbs, little comments about the board, how decisions were being made, and how my role might not be as secure as she thought. I wasn't outright lying, but I was definitely painting a picture that would make her question my future in the company. Finally, one night, I decided to lay it all out. "Monica," I said, sitting her down in the living room, "there's something I need to tell you." She tilted her head, looking concerned. "What is it?" I sighed, trying to look conflicted. "So, I've been going over Dad's will with the family lawyer, and there's something I found out that I wasn't expecting. It turns out I'm not his biological son." Her eyes widened. "What? That doesn't make any sense." "I know," I said, shaking my head. "Apparently, Dad adopted me when I was a baby, but I guess he never wanted it to be a big deal. The thing is, because of that, the majority of the inheritance is going to Luke. He's taking over as CEO, and I'm only getting a small portion." Monica sat there for a moment, processing what I'd just said. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. "Wait," she said slowly, "so you're not going to be in charge?" I shook my head. "Nope. I mean, I'll still have a role in the company, but it's more like a consultant. Luke's the one running the show now." Her face tightened, but she quickly masked it with a weak smile. "Well, I mean, as long as you're okay with it, right? That's what matters." "Yeah," I said, leaning back. "It's not ideal, but it is what it is. At least I don't have to deal with all the stress of running the company." She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't buying it. Her mind was already racing, trying to figure out what this meant for her. After planting the idea that my role in the company wasn't as secure as Monica thought, I sat back and watched. I didn't have to wait long to see the cracks start forming. It was subtle at first, but the shift in her behavior was impossible to miss once you knew what to look for. She started talking about Luke a lot more, not just in passing but in a way that felt calculated. "Luke's really stepping up, huh?" she'd say, almost like she was fishing for something. Or, "It's impressive how he's handling everything, he's got such a strong presence." Hearing her talk about my brother like that made my stomach turn. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them, like she was testing how far she could push before I noticed. But I didn't call her out. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd go. One day she brought up Luke in a way that really set me off. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and she was scrolling through her phone as usual. Out of nowhere she said, "Do you think Luke ever feels overwhelmed? I mean, with all the responsibility he has now?" I shrugged, keeping my tone casual. "Probably. It's a big job." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You know, I should check in with him, just to see how he's doing. It's important to support each other during transitions like this." I wanted to laugh at the audacity of it. Monica had never shown much interest in Luke before, and now she was suddenly concerned about his well-being? It was obvious what she was doing, but I played along. "That's nice of you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm sure he'd appreciate it." The next few days confirmed everything I'd been suspecting. She started texting Luke more frequently, always under the guise of support. At first, it was harmless stuff. Articles about leadership, little comments about how impressed she was with his work. But then it got bolder. One night, Luke forwarded me a message from her. It read, "I admire how decisive you are. You're so good at taking charge. Max is great, but you have this natural confidence that's really inspiring." Reading it made my blood boil, but I held back my anger. I wanted to see how far she was willing to take things. Over the next week, the messages became more personal. She'd ask Luke how his day was going, share stories about her stressful schedule, and even start dropping compliments about his appearance. "You always look so sharp in meetings," one of her texts read. "It's really impressive." Then came the photos. They weren't inappropriate, at least not overtly, but they were clearly meant to get his attention. One was of her at a high-end coffee shop captioned, "This place made me think of you. We should grab coffee here sometime." Another was of her in a sleek outfit saying, "I was thinking about wearing this to the next event. What do you think?" It was painfully transparent. Luke and I had always been close, and he didn't hold back when he showed me everything. She's not even trying to be subtle, he said, shaking his head. You sure you don't want me to say something? Not yet, I told him. I want to see how far she'll go. The final straw came when Monica showed up at Luke's office unannounced. He texted me as soon as she arrived, saying she'd claimed she was in the area and wanted to stop by to check on him. She brought him coffee and sat in his office for nearly an hour, talking about the company and how impressed she was with his leadership. She's laying it on thick, Luke said when he called me afterward. At this point, it's like she's auditioning for a role. That night, Monica came home acting like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day, and curled up on the couch like everything was normal. But I couldn't even look at her the same way. She wasn't the woman I thought I was going to marry. She wasn't the person I'd fallen in love with. And now that I'd seen her true colors, I couldn't unsee them. The most shocking part was how easy it had been for her to switch gears. The moment she thought my position in the company was shaky, she started angling for Luke. It wasn't about love or loyalty, it was about what she could get out of it. I spent the rest of the week documenting everything. Luke and I kept a record of her texts, photos, and visits. I wanted to make sure that when the time came, there'd be no room for her to deny what she'd done. She thought she was being clever, but she didn't realize that we were one step ahead. By the end of the week, I had more than enough proof to confront her, but I wasn't ready to pull the trigger just yet. I wanted to see if she'd dig herself in even deeper. The way she acted around me was almost comical. She still played the role of the supportive fiancée, asking me how work was going and pretending to care about my stress, but her questions always had an edge to them, like she was fishing for something. What did the board say about the new project? She asked one night. They approved it, I said simply. That's great, she said, her tone a little too cheerful. Did Luke present it? He's really good at that kind of thing. It took everything in me not to roll my eyes. Yeah, he did a great job. Her smile faltered for a second, and I could see the disappointment behind her eyes. She was trying so hard to act like she cared about me, but her true motives were written all over her face. By now, I wasn't just angry, I was disgusted. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who would do whatever it took to climb the ladder. She wasn't my partner, she was a parasite. But I wasn't about to let her win. The pieces were all in place and the trap was set. Now it was just a matter of time before she realized she'd been caught. By the time Monica agreed to meet Luke at his apartment, I knew she had taken the bait. Every step she'd taken over the past few weeks had been more desperate, more blatant. Now she thought she was closing in on her next move, but she had no idea we were way ahead of her. The plan was simple. Luke invited her over under the pretense of discussing the company. He told her he wanted to go over some ideas about the business, especially since he was the one running things now. Of course, Monica jumped at the opportunity. She made sure to ask if I'd be there, and when Luke casually said I'd be busy, her response was a little too eager. Oh, perfect, that works out. The day of the meeting, I was already set up at Luke's apartment before she arrived. Luke lived in a sleek high-rise with a great view of the city. Exactly the kind of place Monica would have pictured herself living if she played her cards right. I was tucked away in one of the spare bedrooms, phone in hand, ready to record everything. We didn't need a lot of elaborate prep. Monica was so caught up in her own schemes that she didn't bother being cautious. When the doorbell rang, I stayed completely still as I heard Luke let her in. Wow, Monica said, her voice bright and sugary. Your place is amazing. I don't remember it being this nice last time I was here. Luke laughed. Yeah, well, I had a few upgrades done recently. Got to keep things sharp. Her heels clicked against the hardwood as she walked further inside. I brought this for you, she said, and I could hear her setting something down on the counter. Luke later told me it was a ridiculously expensive painting. Who brings a painting to a casual business talk? Monica, that's who. From my spot in the spare bedroom, I had a perfect view through a small gap in the door. Monica had dressed to impress, tight red dress, perfectly styled hair, and makeup done like she was heading to some high-end gala instead of a simple meeting. She had that smile on her face, the one she used when she wanted something, and it was nauseating to see it directed at Luke. The conversation started out harmless enough. She asked how he was handling the new responsibility and complimented his leadership skills. She leaned forward slightly as they talked, her body language almost screaming, "Look at me. I'm here for you." Luke, to his credit, played it cool. He didn't give her much, just enough to keep her talking. You're really good at this, she said after a few minutes. It's no wonder your dad trusted you with everything. You've got such a clear vision for the company. Thanks, Luke replied casually, like he wasn't even fazed. She laughed lightly. I mean it, not everyone has that kind of presence. Max is great, of course, but you have this natural confidence that's just so impressive. Hearing her say that made my stomach churn. She didn't even hesitate to throw me under the bus. She kept finding ways to steer the conversation toward herself. You know, she said, tilting her head. I've always been interested in the business side of things. I think it's fascinating how much potential there is for growth. I'd love to help in any way I can. Luke nodded, playing along. What kind of role do you see yourself in? Monica smiled, her tone becoming more flirtatious. Oh, I don't know, something supportive. I'm good at organizing and motivating people. I think I could bring a lot to the table. She reached out and lightly touched his arm, laughing at something he said. It was so calculated, so blatant, and I felt a surge of anger as I recorded the whole thing. After about 20 minutes of small talk and thinly veiled compliments, Monica made her move. You know, she said, her voice dropping slightly, I've been thinking a lot about the future. You and I could make an amazing team. With your leadership and my support, there's no limit to what we could accomplish. She slid a little closer to him on the couch, her knee nearly brushing his. Imagine it, the two of us working side by side. The company would thrive. Luke leaned back slightly, keeping a polite distance. What about Max? He asked, his tone neutral. Her response made me grip my phone tighter. Max is sweet, but let's be real, he doesn't have the drive you do. He's comfortable where he is, but you're different. You're ambitious, you have a vision. My fist clenched as I recorded her words. She had no idea she was digging her own grave. Then came the final move. She placed her hand on Luke's shoulder, leaning in just slightly. I think we could do great things together, Luke, don't you? Luke glanced at his watch, keeping his cool. You know, I just remembered I have to head out soon. Something urgent came up. Monica blinked, clearly caught off guard. Oh, well, I guess we can pick this up another time. Luke nodded, already standing up and moving toward the door. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for stopping by. I stayed hidden until I heard the front door close behind her. When I finally came out of the room, Luke looked at me and shook his head. She's unbelievable, he said. You got all that? Every word, I replied, holding up my phone. I couldn't even feel angry anymore, just a cold, quiet satisfaction. She thought she was playing us, but now we had everything we needed to expose her for who she really was. The day of the unmasking arrived, and I won't lie. I'd been looking forward to it. Not in a vindictive way, okay, maybe a little, but because I wanted to finally close the chapter on Monica's lies and deceit. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, watching her maneuver, and pretending everything was fine. Now, it was time to put all the cards on the table. The setting couldn't have been more perfect. A family dinner to celebrate my dad's legacy. It was the kind of event where everyone close to the family showed up. Extended relatives, business associates, and even a few board members from the company. Monica had, of course, insisted on being there. It's important to show your family that we're united, she'd said, her tone oozing with self-importance. She arrived dressed to impress, wearing a designer dress I'd bought her months ago. She looked every bit the part of a supportive fiancée, poised, polished, and ready to charm anyone who crossed her path. But I knew the truth. Beneath that perfect exterior was someone who was about to have her entire facade ripped apart. Luke and I had planned everything carefully. We weren't going to cause a scene or turn the dinner into a public spectacle, but we wanted everyone who mattered to see Monica for who she really was. The evidence was ready, screenshots of her messages, recordings of her conversations, and even the video from Luke's apartment. There was no way she could talk her way out of this. The evening started off normally enough. Guests mingled, and everyone was reminiscing about my dad. Monica played her part perfectly, laughing at the right moments, and nodding along to stories she didn't even know. I kept my distance, letting her enjoy her last moments of pretending she belonged in this world. When dinner was served, the real show began. Luke stood up to give a toast, his voice calm and steady, as he spoke about our dad's legacy and the values he instilled in us. Monica looked positively glowing, probably thinking she was about to ride the coattails of that legacy into her dream life. But then Luke's tone shifted. There's something else I want to address tonight, he said, glancing around the room. It's not easy to talk about, but I think it's important for everyone here to know the truth. The room went silent, all eyes on him. Monica tilted her head, a slight frown crossing her face. She didn't realize what was coming, not yet. As you all know, my brother Max has been through a lot recently. Losing Dad, stepping into new responsibilities. It hasn't been easy, and through it all, he's had the support of someone who is supposed to stand by him no matter what. Monica smiled, probably assuming Luke was talking about her in a positive light. Her hand even moved to touch my arm, like she wanted to bask in the attention. But Luke continued, his expression hardening. Sometimes people aren't who they appear to be, and unfortunately, Max has learned that the hard way. That's when I stood up. Monica, I said, turning to face her. I think it's time we had a real conversation about your intentions. Her smile froze, and her hand dropped from my arm. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice shaky. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and held it up. This, I said, tapping the screen to play the recording from Luke's apartment. the room filled with her voice as she praised Luke's leadership, criticized me, and suggested that the two of them would make a great team. Her face went pale as the recording continued, the weight of her words hanging in the air. By the time the audio reached the part where she called me sweet but comfortable, and leaned into Luke for her final pitch, she looked like she wanted to disappear. When the recording ended, the room was dead silent. All eyes were on Monica, who was now stammering and looking around frantically. That's not what it sounds like," she said, her voice high-pitched and defensive. "You don't understand. This is a misunderstanding." "Is it?" I said, my tone cold. "Because I have screenshots of your texts too. You were planning this from the moment you thought I wasn't the one in charge." She turned to Luke, her expression desperate. "Luke, tell them. You know this isn't what it looks like. I was trying to help." Luke didn't even flinch. "Help? By trying to undermine Max and position yourself as my partner? That's what you call help?" Her parents, who had been sitting across the table, looked horrified. Her mother's face was red with embarrassment, while her father leaned forward, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "Monica," her father said, his voice low and stern. "What is he talking about? Is this true?" "Dad, no, it's not true," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "They're twisting everything. They're trying to make me look bad." I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. "No one's twisting anything. These are your words, Monica, your actions. You made your choice when you decided to betray me, and now you're facing the consequences." She broke down then, crying and pleading. "Please, Max, you don't understand. I was scared about our future. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I panicked." I shook my head, my voice steady. "You didn't panic, you calculated, you saw an opportunity, and you went for it. But you underestimated me and my family." Her parents looked like they wanted to crawl under the table. Her father stood up abruptly, muttering apologies to me and Luke before turning to his daughter. "We'll talk about this later," he said sharply. "Get your things. We're leaving." Monica turned to me one last time, her face streaked with tears. "Max, please, I love you, we can fix this." But I didn't falter. "No, Monica, we can't. You've shown me exactly who you are, and I can't unsee it. This is over." As her father dragged her out of the room, the tension in the air finally broke. The rest of the guests looked awkward, unsure of what to say or do. Luke clapped me on the shoulder, his way of saying, "You did the right thing." After dinner, a few people came up to me, offering their support. Some were shocked, others unsurprised, but everyone agreed on one thing: Monica had no place in my life or in our family. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of her lies and manipulation was gone, and I could finally focus on what mattered, rebuilding my life without her in it. The next day, I started getting texts from her. At first, they were the usual desperate attempts to apologize. "Max, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain." Then came the excuses. "You misunderstood everything. I only wanted what was best for us." When I didn't respond, she escalated. "I can't believe you'd betray me like that after everything we've been through." I blocked her number, but she found other ways to reach out. Emails, messages through mutual friends, even handwritten letters left at my door. Each one was more frantic than the last. She alternated between begging for forgiveness and accusing me of ruining her life. It was exhausting, but I refused to engage. She didn't deserve a response, and I wasn't going to waste any more energy on her. Then, a week later, she dropped the bombshell. I was sitting in my office going over some paperwork when an email from Monica popped up in my inbox. The subject line read, "You need to know this." Against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside was a single line, "I'm pregnant, Max. It's your baby." I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. My first reaction wasn't shock or panic, it was disbelief. This was Monica, the same woman who had lied, manipulated, and betrayed me at every turn. There was no way she was telling the truth now. This wasn't about a baby, this was her last-ditch effort to regain control. Still, I couldn't ignore it completely. I forwarded the email to Luke with a short message, "Look at this nonsense." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Luke calling me. "Did you respond?" he asked. "Nope," I said, "and I'm not going to. She's full of it." "Good," he said. "She's probably hoping you'll freak out and go running back to her." "Don't give her the satisfaction." I wasn't planning to. I knew Monica well enough to see through her game. She'd lied about everything else, why should this be any different? But Monica wasn't giving up that easily. Over the next few days, she started contacting my family. She called my mom, claiming she was pregnant and terrified about what to do. She even reached out to Luke, saying she needed to talk to him about the future of our family. Luke shut her down immediately. "If it's Max's, get a paternity test," he told her flatly. "Otherwise, stop wasting my time." When that didn't work, she turned to her own parents. I don't know exactly what she told them, but whatever it was, it didn't fly. By then, her parents were already furious with her over the scandal at the dinner. Her dad had apparently been receiving calls from people in their social circle, asking what had happened and why their daughter was being talked about in such unflattering terms. For a family as proud and image-conscious as hers, it was the ultimate humiliation. After one particularly heated argument, her parents kicked her out. She showed up at my apartment that same night, pounding on the door and yelling for me to let her in. When I didn't answer, she slumped against the door, crying loudly enough for my neighbors to hear. "Max, please," she sobbed. "I have nowhere else to go. I need you. We can fix this. For the baby's sake." Eventually, one of my neighbors came out and told her to leave. She screamed at them, calling them names, but she finally stormed off, muttering about how I'd regret this. That was the last time I saw her in person. But her attempts to contact me didn't stop. She kept sending emails, insisting she was pregnant and needed my help. I ignored them all. A few weeks later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Monica had been staying on friends' couches, trying to scrape together enough money to get by. Her parents had completely cut her off, and word of her behavior had spread far enough that most people didn't want anything to do with her. She'd gone from living a comfortable, glamorous life to struggling just to survive. The last email I got from her came about a month after the dinner. It was long, rambling, and full of contradictions. She said she was sorry, that she loved me, that she hated me, that she was pregnant, that she wasn't pregnant but might be, that she couldn't live without me, and that she hoped I burned in hell. It was the most unhinged thing I'd ever read, and I deleted it without replying. Now, months later, my life is peaceful again. I've moved on, focusing on the things that truly matter: my family, the business, and my own happiness. Luke and I are closer than ever, and the company is thriving under our leadership. Every now and then, someone will ask about Monica, and I'll just shrug and say, she's in the past. Because that's exactly where she belongs, in the past. Her greed, her lies, her manipulation, it all led to her downfall. She thought she could play me, but in the end, she only played herself. I know who I am, and I know what I deserve, and it sure as hell isn't someone like her.